Welcome everyone to the ninth and the final session for 2020 of the AASPI Speaker Series. My name is Russell Mason, Vice President of AASPI and your MC for tonight. And as per usual, I'd like to ask everyone if they can keep their devices set to mute during tonight's presentation. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat function on your Zoom screen. And our hardworking AASPI President and question moderator for tonight, Sue Brunialti, there she is, will pose your questions at the end of the talk. So tonight's guest speaker, we have Melbourne-based photographer and AASPI member Mario Mirabile. Mario described himself as an enthusiast photographer who has been involved in the art since the early 80s. He enjoys many styles of photography, but draws his inspiration and primarily from the urban environment. Pre-pandemic, Mario spent a lot of the time roaming the streets and the laneways of Melbourne. He has a liking for uncluttered graphic compositions, but is happy to work with whatever situation is thrown at him. He also enjoys leaving the confines of the city and chasing landscapes, light and nature. Tonight, Mario will share his insights, inspirations, and touch on important photography ethics points. So on behalf of the AASPI committee, I'd like to welcome all members and guests to tonight's presentation. I'm looking forward to this one, Mario, so it's over to you.
Thanks, Russell. Yeah, I'll just sort of jump onto the share. Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, so I sort of started, as Russell said, I started playing around with photography back in the early 80s. I had a darkroom set up. I was doing my own black and white printing, and it sort of got a bit messy after that. I had my own place. I had room to set something up. You know, then sort of you shift around, and all of that tended to get lost. And I always wanted to come back to it. I first went digital in around 2004. I had a little Canon point and shoot. Still had my film SLR, but I don't think I ever put another roll of film through it after that, until the day I decided to sell it, which I sort of regret now, but not so much. And sort of I just got captivated by digital. I always planned to upgrade. The opportunity finally came. I got a DSLR in 2008 and sort of took off from there. I'd always had a liking for street photography. I loved the work of Bresson and Leiter and all the greats. But I don't think that I necessarily sort of followed exactly in their in any of their styles, and I started just sort of chasing images, and I thought I was doing pretty well. But then in 2013, I actually started working in the city, well, Docklands exactly, and you know, and suddenly my vision started to change, especially after I had hip replacement surgery, I think at the end of 2014, at which point I needed to start doing a lot more walking. And so I just started walking the streets at lunchtime for an hour, you know, sometimes two. And this is probably the only image that survives really that pre-move into the city. And I had a look through some of the older stuff and really, there's nothing there I would really like to show anymore. I think that sort of a lot of it was sort of fairly derivative, fairly, you know, wasn't really something that was sort of coming out of me. I was sort of more or less imitating and sort of trying to be a little bit like, I don't know, someone that probably wasn't me, which is sort of hard, because I read a quote from Minor White just a week or so ago, and look, I can't remember the exact words, but it was along the lines of, everything has been photographed except this. Photograph things better. So that was his advice. So this was his advice. Now, Minor White died in 1976. So this advice is probably the best part of 50 years old. So if everything had been photographed 50 years ago, Can you imagine what it's like now? And so trying to find something that was a little bit more uniquely mine took some time. But, I really spent a lot of time walking around the streets, and I started seeing things, started seeing things very close to work. And this was just outside my work, in just off Collins Street, looking down into Aurora Lane. This scene is now gone. A victim of construction. Those arrows, which had sort of provided several good shots for me over time, are now gone. Other things like just walking up and down Little Bourke Street, day in, day out, you sort of walk past Niagara Lane, and you just on Niagara Lane, and you look up and you see this sticking out from the from a doorway. And it sort of really helps to hone your observation skills, to just walk around and look. Sort of little sort of things catch your eye, sort of flash of light. This was sort of up above eye level, and I sort of ended up sticking the camera up over my head to try and get a more or less level shot. But the light on this woman's face catches your eye, and so you sort of go chasing that, and then you get this interesting little bit of script at the bottom that's licensed desserts, which was part of a much longer screed, describing what the bill of fare was at this place. But on its own, it forms an interesting little conundrum as to what the hell is a licensed dessert. Something to think about. Little things, the classic juxtapositions. This was up in Fitzroy at a cafe. I don't even know if this scene is still there. It's up in Rose Street. And just sort of, watching this girl, and suddenly she sticks her finger out, the finger's up top, and it just all comes together. Once again, classic observation, the classic skills of street photography, and these are all pretty much in the vein of classic street photography. Once again, just looking, chance observation. You look over the side of the balustrade along Collins Street, looking down into one of the laneways down below, and you see this, and I get one shot off, and then he gets up and walks away. So luck, observation, sort of taking your chances, having your camera out, having your camera ready, all of the things that sort of go along with getting those classic street shots, and and a huge element of luck, huge dose of luck involved. This is in the National Gallery, the Australian Gallery, the Potter Centre. And I really liked the way this seat's set up, and there was a guy sitting there, working on his computer, and I got a couple of shots of him quietly sort of just shooting across, but it didn't really amount to much. So I sort of went wandering through the gallery looking around, and then I come back and I spot this. So sort of take your chances when they come, and it's it's like I said, classic street photography: observation, opportunity, being prepared, learning to see. This one I particularly like because I love the color, I love the pattern, the two cans, which, truth be told, I might have kicked into a slightly more interesting arrangement. And then I sort of sat down, and I got my ultra wide angle lens, and I was waiting for someone to walk through the shot. And of course, the moment you're sitting there with a camera, people see you and stop because they don't want to ruin your shot. It's the usual story. This girl did exactly that. She stopped, but then she must have decided she was in a hurry, because then she just hurries through the scene. I got one shot away. One very lucky shot, I think. But it works. Once again, being ready, learning to understand the scene, learning to understand, work with what the other scene gives you. Here we are in De Grave Street. Same thing. I just sort of loved the way this guy was sitting there on his own with his glass of red, and the people just sort of passing by. And I don't even think that I was aware completely that he had actually looked up at me at that critical moment. But it just worked out. Once again, the usual thing: classic street photography, classic observation. Buskers, they can be good. They can be, not so good. There's lots of busker shots, but this one I really like the way the movement works. It just really feels like he's actually sort of flying away at the fiddle. Even though my camera has got pretty good image stabilization, I still had to use the dumpster across the other side of the lane as a tripod. So I think that's probably the only time I've ever used a dumpster as a tripod, but it did the trick and it got the shot. I'm not even sure that I could find this place again because it's a little bit out of my usual paths. It's a little cafe somewhere north of Lonsdale Street up towards Latrobe Street. And this to me was that sort of wonderful sort of separation. You know, I call this shot Outcast. He's the guy who's the modern version, and I know that lepers still exist in the world, but this is the modern Western version of the leper. You know, the smoker has become the modern leper. They're outcast. They're forbidden to mingle with the unafflicted. And I just wish that those two guys in the background had been having this little conversation together, because it really would have increased that sort of sense of separation of him from them, and sort of being outside of the rest of society. But you know, once again, a shot that really worked for me, and I think it works anyway. But sort of tells a great story. This is another one where I don't think very much went right. Once again, it's in De Grave Street, and I'm not even sure what it was that I saw, whether it was the girl's expression, the light or something, but I sort of just lifted the camera up and just went bang, didn't even frame the shot. Nothing's in focus. The focus is off. But there is something about the mood, something about the light. It just feels very much like a 50s film still to me. And I just love the way her expression and the way the light's falling on her face, the way he's sort of, you know, off in his own world. It's like she's dreaming of being somewhere else. You know, someone suggested she's, you know, dreaming of an ex-boyfriend. I don't know, but there is something that just absolutely works for me. But yeah, it's one of those shots where, as I say, nothing really went right from a technical perspective, but it works for me. Yeah, I didn't really know. This was in Brunetti's, and the light was pretty bad, and I didn't really want to push the ISO up too much, and I didn't, you know, I didn't know where to focus, right? Because the only thing that was being still was the coffee cups. I tried focusing on them, but they're moving around pretty quickly, as the waiters in Brunetti's do. And so in the end, I decided, well, let's make it about the coffee. Right. So this is, you know, the classic Melbourne shot. It's all about coffee. And that's, you know, it's very quintessentially Melbourne. So the coffee is the king, and you know, the waiters are just the bit players. The baristas are the bit players. You know, the coffee is king in Melbourne. Another little laneway up off Flinders Lane. There was just something. There was these two guys who were putting up their posters, and there is just something about the way that sheet is falling, the way he's sort of trying to, you know, stretch it. I don't know. It just, to me, it just caught my eye the way these guys were working, and I thought that this one worked really well. Very simple, very graphic composition with, you know, him in the center, and sort of the missing, sort of about to go missing. I just felt for me that it worked on a number of levels, and there's nothing particularly remarkable about it. This is the sort of thing we see every day, but it just seemed to come together with his positioning and the posters themselves, perhaps even the wording on the posters. This was late at night after my camera club does a beginner's course once a year, and last year it turned out that the last night of the course was, or that we do a night shoot. And when I checked the calendar, the night shoot turned out to be the one of the nights of the rescheduled white nights, and I was absolutely terrified that we weren't going to be able to move. But because they spread the white night out quite a bit last year, it wasn't too bad, and they didn't get in the way. And I spent a bit of time wandering around afterwards. I was pretty tired, but I just found this spot here where the people were moving up and down the stairway, and I just, you know, sort of, no tripod, no nothing. I just sort of sat there and hoped for the best, and managed to get a couple of shots where there was really good sharpness in the background, in the setting, and just this wonderful feeling of flow in the people. Ghosts of the night. Another one where, you know, you just sort of see the lines, you see the site, you see whatever, and you just set up and hope for the best. just sort of, it's not quite a spray and pray, but to try and get this exact lineup of the the legs with the line and the sort of the colors and everything all just coming together and working together. Just one that appealed to me, and I thought it had that really strong graphic quality that works well. And I thought I would throw this one in. Everything else that I'm showing tonight is from Melbourne. But this was sort of a bit of a classic accident from when I was in Venice in 2016. And I was supposed to be back there this year. And I'm sort of still wondering if and when I ever will get back. But, for obvious reasons. In fact, I would probably have left last Friday. Having sort of set up to spend 6 weeks there and just sort of live like a local and sort of experience it like a local, because I felt after a week that we'd been there last time that I was just starting to get a feel for what the place was all about. This was one where I was heading back to my accommodation, and it was pissing down. And I didn't really have the camera out. There wasn't too many people about, but this is sort of heading back up towards our lodging. And I just see these two guys coming down the street, and the light and the umbrellas and everything. And I didn't have time to set it up. I just sort of pulled the camera out and hoped for the best. Now, 9 times out of 10, this would not have survived the daily cull. But obviously I must have seen something in it, because I didn't delete it even after I'd transferred it to my computer. And it sort of sat around for about 2 years before I rediscovered it. And like I said, going back to the day, I'm still not sure why I didn't delete it, but, I played around with it just a little bit, sort of pulling up the highlights and everything. And this very quickly became my favorite image of that trip, and was sort of very much all about why I wanted to go back. The light, the mood, just the feeling of the place. It's just for those of you that haven't been to Venice, it's like a theme park. If you're a photographer of any sort, it is like a theme park. And when I found out that 60,000 people lived there, I thought to myself, well, what the hell is it like to live in a theme park? And I just had this dream of going back and living in a theme park. And I'm still going to do it. I don't know when, but I will do it. Another thing I like to do when I see a face that really grabs me is a little bit of street portraiture. Now, this is not quite as sort of straightforward. I will tend to work on these shots to a certain extent, which probably takes them well away from the realms of the classic street portrait, and where everything is sort of pretty much as you found it. And faces like this. I mean, you've got the classic face of the old man. This was Ernie, who was a jewelry seller by the side of the road. He had his little stall set up in Swanston Street, I think, and he was sort of happy enough to pose. We had a bit of a chat, and took a few pictures, and I just sort of loved the intensity in those eyes. This is from quite a while ago, and I don't know that I would necessarily do it quite the same way, but I still think it worked pretty well. I don't know this girl's name. I was going to go back and find out, and I never got around to it. She was a barista down in St Kilda. And looks just something about, she had real presence, and the light she was near a big open window, and I sort of, waved at her, and I, sort of held my camera up, and she smiled and nodded, and I just got, I think, one shot. And I just sort of, once again, fantastic connection, love the eyes, love the ink, love everything about her. She's just got such presence, and presence is, I think, what makes the street shot. And street portraits. Street portraits can be really hard to nail. I mean, sometimes, some people work well. Some people have got real sort of presence and connection. Other people, they just stiffen up, and you sort of look at it afterwards and you say, well, fantastic face, but just doesn't quite nail that presence, and that's the thing that you really try and look for is presence and feeling and sort of real connection. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. This guy was walking along in Burke Street, and I had his little Chihuahua trotting along beside him, and he sort of stooped and scooped him up and put him in his backpack and sort of put it on his back. And I thought, oh no, I've got to get that. And so I chased him, and we had a bit of a chat, and I sort of put him against the wall there, and I said, sort of, just try and look a little bit sort of, a little bit of those. I was trying to get one of those deadpan portraits that seem to do so well these days, and I think I nailed it with him. But you've got that little bit of extra fun with the dog down the bottom, just sort of and it's something that you've got to work on. So you've got to look at it and sort of notice it, because the dog doesn't necessarily stand out, but once you sort of pick up on it, it just gives you that extra punch in the face that really gives it that extra impact. Anzac Day, I sort of went in on a regular basis for quite a few years. Sort of never really got anything decent out of the dawn service, but later on in the areas, not so much where the marching happens, but where the veterans gathered, there were some really good opportunities. My favourite spot was here, just outside Flinders Street Station on Flinders Street, because you could get a decent background, and you could sort of bring people forward, get the light on their face, and sort of no light in the background. And this guy, even though he looks really serious, was a laugh a minute. We had a good chat, and he just sort of, he was hilarious. But he struck this pose, and it just looks so solemn and look, matching the solemnity of the day. But he, like if you compare this to what he was on the day, it's really quite a different story. National Gallery a few years ago. They had this exhibition where, as you walked in, the exhibit was basically they'd give you a flower to stick on the wall. And so I wandered in with my flower, and I'm looking around, and I spot this guy, and I thought, oh, and he had his flower in his hand. I said, hang on, could I grab a picture of you, and would you mind sticking there? And he was happy to oblige, and I thought it worked. This has never done any good for me in terms of sort of competitions or anything else. But to me, this is great. I mean, I call it speak no evil. It sort of got a sort of real oomph about it that I really enjoy. But no one else seems to like it. But you don't always have to do it for other people. As long as you're happy with it yourself, that's the main thing. This was down at Buxton Contemporary. And there was this sculpture which was all white, and the lighting was white, and then this girl walks past, dressed in white with white hair, and she was very pale. And I thought, white on white on white on white, and so I sort of bailed her up and asked her if I could get the shot, and she was happy to oblige. So yeah, if you spot the right person, right, just get your courage. Screw up your courage and go and ask them, especially if you can get them in the right position. And this one is one I have been working on to find an appropriate time to show it. I had it in the Rotary Club of Caulfield had a big football exhibition at Caulfield Town Hall, and I had this in there, but I've been waiting for the right time to put it up, and the right time just hasn't come for the last few years. But this was I had this picture of Troy West, Catman, and it was a nothing particularly much sort of shot, but then I saw this little tutorial on how to put together a mosaic background in Photoshop, and I thought, well, yeah, that could work as a background for this sort of thing. All I need is, maybe I thought, 50 or 100 pictures of Geelong supporters to use as a background. Well, I went out and I took, I think, about 100 pictures. I went out on a match day at the MCG and was just bailing up anyone in Geelong colours and asking them if I could take their picture. Some people were happy to do it. Some people wanted to know why. Some people, it's the usual story. But the thing that was really interesting about it was that security actually came and bailed me up. What are you doing? I'm taking pictures. Well, you can't do it here. You serious? No, you can't do it here. You can't run your business. I'm not running a business. I'm just trying to take some photos of people. You can't do it here. So anyway, on that occasion, I just sort of went around further around and I got some more pictures, but I left it at that. And I came back next time Geelong played at the G and I started taking pictures again. So I sort of moved a little bit further away, but the same thing. Security came and bailed me up. Wanted to know what I was doing. Why was I doing it? So I called the MCC on the Monday and I told them what had happened, and they say, well, it's the AFL's prerogative. They have full control over what happens on a match day. I said, and well, you need to talk to them. So I talked to them, and they, well, why are you doing it? What are you doing? Da 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 da. I couldn't believe that just sort of snapping some pictures of people in their footy gear would cause so much controversy. In the end, I had to get permission from the MCC. I had to get permission from the AFL, and I had to carry these letters with me. And I still got bailed up by security. I sort of just waved the letters at them and they left me alone. In the end, right, I think I ended up taking over 400 pictures of people. About 315 of them made it into this shot. And I'm sure, I hope that one day I'll actually get a good excuse to put it up somewhere. I was hoping for this year, but maybe another year. I'm in there somewhere. Can't remember where. Biggest disaster was that when I was putting it together, because I just bailed up anyone wearing blue and white. When I was putting it together, I actually noticed that one of the people had a Hyundai logo on their clothing, and Hyundai is Carlton's sponsor. So that would have been an absolute disaster if I'd got a Carlton supporter in there. I also like exploring the architecture of the city, both new and old. Some of the older buildings have got some real character, and I'm seeing more and more character creeping into some of the newer buildings. Some of the buildings that are going up now have got a little bit more thought go into them, a little bit more flair, a little bit more flourish. This is the headquarters of Tennis Australia out just behind Rod Laver Arena. And I saw this coming past it on the train once and thought, just looking at all of those angles and thinking, wow. So I went and just sort of explored it and sort of there's some really interesting angles here, especially if you go in with a wide angle lens. You can get some really, really striking shots. Needed a bit of a cleanup because they don't keep it very clean themselves, and I had to drop another sky in to give it a little bit more oomph. But it's just one of those really different structures that we're having going up around town. This is another one which is pretty much across the road from where I work. Wonderful external spiral staircase. Sort of any number of good shots in this area, and I'm sure most of you have found it at some point. This is on Collins Street, just across and down from Southern Cross, on the Dockland side. This space has got so many possibilities, worth exploring. If you don't know about it, go and have a look at it, because the staircase on its own, sort of looking up from above, looking down, it's all over the place. Go and have a look. Southern Cross Station, you get some funny looks when you sort of back yourself up against the light pole and just sort of look straight up. Same deal. It's one of those things. I've had people say it looks a bit like the sort of some sort of robotic arm on the on the International Space Station or something, but unusual perspectives. sort of don't sort of constrain yourself to just sitting there and taking the actual shot. Sort of explore, look at every angle, because somewhere in there you'll find a shot that perhaps hasn't been taken, but perhaps you can take it even better than someone else, even if it has been taken. Yeah, that building down at RMIT that just keeps on giving. And this is sort of round the back for a change. And just that little patch of light transformed it for me. It just sort of, I was looking at it, and then the sun just, it must have bounced off something somewhere, and it just illuminated that little patch, and it didn't last very long. And I was probably lucky to be there when it happened, but it just sort of gave it that extra little bit of something that gives it a point of difference. And this is another old favourite, 333 Collins. And I didn't actually think this was going to work, but this is a, sort of it's 180. For those of you that don't know it, there's this big domed atrium with doorways that lead down to Little Collins Street on one side and down to Flinders Lane on one side and open onto Collins Street on the other side. And so this is a 180-degree, little bit more panorama, stitched panorama, just sort of going over the roof and around, and coming back down. So just once again, something that is a little different, and it takes a little bit to realize what it is. And if you don't sort of know the building, it can sort of catch you a little bit unawares, trying to sort of figure out what's going on. And I still haven't quite figured out what the right orientation for this is, whether it's sort of a panoramic or a portrait. But if you turn it on the portrait side, everything just gets so small, it gets hard to sort of, even harder to realize what's going on. But yeah, something a little bit different. Yeah, another old favorite, the MU building. And once again, just pure dumb luck. Just trying to take a bog standard reflection picture, and I get these wonderful little ripples, some timely drops of water just dropping into the puddle, and creating this little visual irritant that sort of breaks it all up and sort of turns it from something that I think is sort of, would be just another reflection shot to something that's got that little bit of extra oomph. I also like going after something that I call small vistas. So they're almost like internal landscapes, very, very closed landscapes. So small, contained, sometimes very small. A rack of shirts in a clothing shop. You go in and you ask the question, and can I take a picture of your shirts? And they sort of give you a strange look, and they say, yeah, sure, why not? And you take a picture of their shirts. Just once again, a simple shot. I believe subsequently that I found that someone else had done it before, so it's another one of those cases where everything has been photographed before. But still, go out and try and make it better. This is a car park in Docklands, which the entire top deck of the car park was absolutely empty, completely empty. And I don't think you can get in there anymore, and I think they're demolishing it or rebuilding it anyway. But just a couple of really interesting shots. I've got another one that I'll show you later on, but this one here, just the simplicity of the geometry and the colors and the sort of interesting stairs going nowhere, or landing you in the bin, just all these curious little elements that sort of all seem to come together, but the sort of striking color is what really caught my eye in the first place. And this was a stinking hot day. I think it was about 43 degrees, and sort of late in the morning, absolutely baking hot, and just enough shadow on here that it didn't sort of wash everything out. But yeah, interesting, almost abstract sort of interpretation of who knows what. Another simple shot, just on a construction site. just sort of playing with the padlock, getting it into position, and sort of getting that sort of really nice defocused background with that sort of crisp lock there. It doesn't really say anything, but to me, I just find it a pleasing image. And sometimes, if you're wandering around the streets and nothing's happening, then you sort of start looking at the smaller things that hopefully you can come away with something for the day. Woolies in Docklands. Something just caught my eye about something about this. You got the red apples here and you got the green apples here. And I thought, no, that's not right. And so you sort of start rearranging the apples, turning them so the little stickers aren't showing. And you've got these 17-year-old Woolies workers, and what are they going to say to this old idiot who's sitting there busy fiddling with the fruit and taking pictures of it? Just a bit of fun, but sort of once again, just observation, looking for something to come away with on a day when nothing much else is going on. Shop display. I'm not really sure. This is a little dress shop just behind St. Paul's Cathedral, and I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of the skulls was in terms of trying to sell women's clothing, but who am I to say? I thought it made a great shot with the headless mannequin. And this is another one that a lot of people look at it. I mean, to me, this is one of my favorite shots, just for its simplicity and sort of vibrance and punch. And a lot of people look at it and say, oh, it's crooked. And I say, yes, that's the point. And they go, oh. And I don't know whether it's me or whether it's, I mean, this is one that has really polarized some people. I mean, you show it to them and they go, what's wrong? No, it either works or it doesn't. And for me, it's always worked. From the moment I took this shot, played around with it, sort of really got that saturated color going, that sort of strong, deep, dark background. I have always thought this was one of my favorite sort of psychological mess with your head type shots. But, it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. What I'm going to sort of take you through now, most of what I've shown you so far is traditional street. So, minimal manipulation, not straight out of camera by any means, but certainly images that you could put into an exhibition or whatever that require that the image not being manipulated. So they might have had a little bit of perspective correction or something like that, perhaps, but they are 95-98% true to what was captured. But sometimes I find that the streets are either not giving me what I'm after that day, or that the image needs something to turn it into something that I want to get. Because at some point I really do like to get involved with my images. I like to be very much hands-on. I shoot raw, nothing is straight out of camera. Everything sort of gets a little bit of, sharpening, tweaking, whatever. I find that I get a great deal of satisfaction in being part of the process. And it's probably, I don't know, maybe it harks back to my darkroom days where you had to get your hands dirty. But I find that I really enjoy that process of taking an image and sort of making it look the way I want. And sometimes that takes a little bit more effort or thought process or transformation. Now, I won't say I don't like, but I certainly don't really do much in the way of heavy compositing. I find that there is a lot, from my perspective, there is a lot of very heavily composited images that are sort of going on. That seems to be the vogue these days, and a lot of the time they seem to me to be little more than technical exercises. Look how clever I am in Photoshop. How many elements can I keep jamming into this picture until it falls apart? I mean, to me, it's still about telling the story. Now, whether or not that story is being told by the simple image that you've captured, or whether or not you need to sort of then go and look for other elements within that picture, it depends very much on what you start with. Like this one here, right, would be at the low end of the scale for in terms of manipulation and change. I mean, I really look for, most of the time, look for simplicity. I look for things that are uncluttered, and I look for things that minimize, have very little in the way of distraction. For those of you that know this wall down on the Yarra, a lot of scuffs, a lot of marks, a lot of crap all over it, and it really, I felt, interfered with the story, with the relationship. I wanted nothing to sort of break that line between the girl and the seagull. And so this has had sort of a fair bit of cleanup on the wall, a little bit of geometric correction and whatever, but this is still very much true to the image that I captured. Same with this one. Once again, whoever put this patch of tiles on the Commonwealth Bank in Elizabeth Street, for mine, didn't make the patch big enough, right? And so I'm just looking for a straight, simple backdrop that, to me, I mean, this image is not about the backdrop. I mean, that was just, I just wanted to remove some distractions. This image to me is all about the look on the girl's face. She's just got this I don't care about whatever, this indifference attitude, this defiance, this really strong expression of fierce independence, and I just wanted to make sure nothing distracted. I wanted the backdrop to be sort of simple and plain as it could be. I think the tiles, as we those of us that have used this as a backdrop know, it works really well, but there were sort of other bits around the place that just weren't what I wanted. And so, I've just extended the tiles a little bit, but once again, very much true to the original image. Same thing here. It just, this alcove that the girl is sitting in, it wasn't big enough, just wasn't big enough. And it didn't sort of tell that story of her sort of looking and anticipating and waiting for whatever is coming. You've got that sort of great feeling that something is coming along, and it just needed a bit more width. And so I gave it the width. And once again, this is very much true to the original image, but it's sort of taken it and extended it and given it that little bit of extra oomph, meaning, a little bit of just, it needed breathing space, and so this to me is a far better shot than I started with, because it just allows that sort of that longing look that the girl's got to sort of just wander off into the distance. If it stopped too short, it would just lose some of its intensity and power. Another one of our favourite shops down in Little Bourke Street, and once again, very little changed on the inside, but simplified, much simpler on the outside. Cleaned up some of the graphics and scuffs and marks on the outside, so that nothing really distracts from these powerful lines and these stories, the story that's going on between these two guys. Once again, very true to the original image, but not strictly street, because it has actually had that degree of manipulation that takes it away from the unmanipulated street shot. Yeah, this one here, this little guy who's sort of striding off into the world on his own to sort of find his own way and make his own destiny. And I mean, you can sort of sense him sort of just full of enthusiasm and courage. It wouldn't be the same story sorry, just swatting a fly. It wouldn't be the same story if Mum, who was in the shot originally, was sort of just trailing along after, sort of just making sure he didn't get into any trouble. And so to me, the story was all about the child, right? Not about Mum trying to protect him. The story would get lost with Mum still in the shot. And so Mum had to go. Right. And once again, I find that this to be a much more compelling story than it started out. It was the story that I wanted out of the shot. Right, that I sort of, this was the story I wanted to make, and I just went about making it. And so once again, I use the material. I take the material that I capture on the street, and I sort of use it. If I can see a story in there, right, then I will just go ahead and make that story, because that is the story that this shot to me wanted to tell. Sort of simple architectural shot, just needed a new sky. Nothing complicated, but this is an interesting one because this is one of those buildings where Southern Cross, you can sort of look out over the roof line, but the building from where this was shot, I got some grief from a security guard just for shooting from their building. So I'll sort of cover that in a little bit more detail in the section on ethics and the law. But sort of something, sometimes the shot, you've got to get the shot. To me, I got the shot, and sort of I went on my way. This is that same car park we were looking at earlier with the staircase and the rubbish bin. And 43 degree baking day, and it was almost like a surreal landscape. Right. The only problem was that there was a sort of fairly smoggy western suburbs in the background, and the western suburbs just had to go. Sorry, Adrian, but to me, this was what I wanted out of the shot. And so you drop a new sky in, and goodbye western suburbs, and sort of you just clean up everything, and suddenly it just takes on this much more graphic, surreal landscape. This girl was enjoying a hamburger, sort of, and I just what caught my eye was just the way the light was falling on her face, and that was the story for me. The hamburger, the sort of shaded eyes, the bright patch of red, the lights in the background. The only problem was that there was she had big plate of breadcrumbs and bits of whatever, and a big glaring white patch of light, sort of just and to me, I wanted to simplify everything. To me, it just came back to where did I want that story to be, and the story was just those simple elements, sort of separated by the black, and so that's what I ended up with. Once again, still essentially true to what I saw, but not strictly street. This one here, this guy was puffing away, making huge clouds of with his vape pipe or whatever they're called, and I just there was him. I just loved his sort of relaxed attitude, and so I asked him. This was not set up as such, but there was interaction here, so not candid. You get in there and you sort of you talk to your subject. So this is more in the way of a portrait, a faceless portrait, if you like, but once again, not strictly street. I'm sitting in there where we're sort of we've got that connection, and we set the whole thing up essentially. I went through a phase where I think I was starting to get a little bit stressed. And this is probably in the last 2 or 3 years. And what was stressing me out was pardon me. And what was stressing me out was just I was starting to feel very, very crowded. The changing demographic or the changing profile of the suburb that I live in, sort of, buildings that, I've been here for 30 odd years, and, it's just becoming unrecognizable. It's becoming much more crowded. You're getting much denser buildings, and it's I imagine that most people are experiencing the same thing, but it was really starting to make me feel very constrained. And it wasn't something that I consciously worked on, but I was looking through some pictures, and I started to see a little bit of trend emerging. And a lot of them seem to be of people trying to find space. And so this sort of developed into a semi-series, which may or may not be ongoing. I haven't really sort of added to it, but I called it Seeking Space, Finding Space. And it's all people trying to find a little bit of quiet and space. So this was at the National Gallery, and this girl was quite taken with her book, and she sort of, a few seconds after I took the picture, she got up and walked away. But I thought it just fitted really into that series. Same thing here. I came across this little alleyway out the back of the Collins Street Post Office during the winter at lunchtime, and someone was having a smoke out the back, and I took a couple of shots, just liking the geometry of it. And I had a look at them, and I liked the way the light was sort of coming through. And being winter, there was still a little bit of light coming through from the inside, but I thought if I come back here at about 4:30, right, I'm going to get something a little bit better as it gets darker. And I did. And the light was really taking over, and I just needed someone in the shot though. And so this guy here, I put him there, I posed him, I sort of said, look up, have a puff, breathe, whatever. So this one here just created that sense of, someone seeking that sort of little bit of quiet and isolation. So once again, a setup shot, and creating that sense of space, and that sense of, sort of isolation, that strong geometry, the sense of space, the sense of solitude. Similar sort of thing here. I was actually on my way up to the security office at Southern Cross to get a permit to take some photos for a couple of hours, which is something I'll talk about a bit later. But as I'm on my way up there, right, I look down and I see this layout, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone since then, a single person in this place. And the fact that I was actually up above it just worked out perfectly. Once again, not strictly street, had a few little adjustments here and there, got rid of some reflections on the tables and whatever. But once again, that sort of sense of creating that sense of space, and sort of, looking for solitude, trying to find something with a little bit of space around you. Similar sort of thing here, very, very straightforward, very simple shot, but sort of, this is a stairway that's usually crowded night and day, and trying to sort of get it with only one person on it. Yeah, good luck. A little bit of a clean up here and there, not strictly street again, but once again within that sort of seeking space aesthetic that I'm trying to sort of, get a body of work together, describing that. Similar sort of thing. It's interesting what, when you go up, everything changes, and I'm pretty sure most people have sort of been through this, that you actually go up above ground level, and you just get such a totally different perspective. This is a car park in Docklands, and sort of just down near the Seafarers Bridge on the Yarra, and yeah, you just got that sense of this guy walking the treadmill, round and round and round and round, and you just need something to sort of get in there and break it all up. And that light is just sort of going to cause that disruption, and sort of just break his pattern. If he can only get round there, if he can only sort of just get fast enough, move fast enough to get round there, he'll sort of be able to get that sort of that break. But once again, within that sort of seeking space, the strong geometry, the solitary figure, the sort of sense of of trying to find an expanse to sort of, clear your head. This is down at Acheron South Bank, and another baking hot day. And I'd been standing out the front. I spotted, I saw this wall, and I thought, that's perfect. I just need someone to walk through the shot in the right place, in the right time, in the right direction. And so I've been standing there for about 15 minutes, and I was, like I said, it was baking hot. It was probably, once again, somewhere in the 40s. And I was about to give up, and this woman comes out of Acker, and she was just absolutely perfect for the shot, with the green top on. And I thought, oh, look, I just got to ask her. So I asked her if, I sort of said, look, I'm trying to get this shot. And I sort of showed her what was, was on the camera, and this is what I'm after. And I said, but I just need someone to walk through it. And she says, okay, I'll do that. And I said, but what'd be really good is if someone would run through it. And she goes, but I said, oh, no, I couldn't ask you to do that, because she was wearing just these flimsy sandals. And I said, oh, she goes, no, don't worry. So she did, 3 or 4 passes. Is that enough? I said, yeah, I think so. And as with most people that I work with, I sort of, I give them a card and say, if you'd like a picture, let me know. And it's really surprising how few people get back to you. They sort of, take your card with great enthusiasm and yes, but very few of them end up getting back to you. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe, look, once upon a time, I suspect that everyone had their picture taken. Having a picture taken was something of novelty, but nowadays, everyone has so many pictures of themselves. What's another picture? I think most of us would probably recognize this building. And once again, it's the same story. I asked this girl to sort of stand in that space, trying to sort of create that sense of, my title for this is Life's a Puzzle. But the problem with it was, and for those of you that are familiar with the building, they didn't have enough struts, that there weren't enough pieces in the puzzle. And so I had to go and construct some more pieces to the puzzle to tell the story that I wanted to tell. So about half of those struts have been added after the fact. But once again, it's the story I'm trying to tell. This is my story, and I'm not going to put this forward as anything other than an image that I've created. And similar situation here. Welcome to the machine. This sort of strong post-apocalyptic rise of the machines type layout out the back of the Potter Museum on the Yarra. But once again, what it needed was the right character. So this guy is passing by, happy to do the modelling for me. This is one that did actually contact me for a picture, which I was happy to give. So once again, just that sense of seeking space, seeking a little bit of sort of head space as much as anything else. The Potter Museum again, or the Potter Gallery again, and everyone once again trying to find their own space. Now, all of these people were in that space at that spot. They might not necessarily have been there at exactly the same time, but once again, just creating that sense of someone looking for space. This is a little unusual in this series because it's actually got more than one person in it, but I felt that the sort of the compartmentalization of each of the individuals in their own little space told that story as well. So works for me. Seeking shelter, sort of lots of wind, lots of rain. One of my favorite spots. I spent a lot of time looking for photographs of those sort of big open, semi-open staircases in Etihad Stadium, and Etihad Stadium's sort of directly opposite me. Here, I've got my back to it when this picture was taken, and I sort of, one day I just happened to turn around and I noticed for the very first time this striking series of diagonals on the back of the NAB building directly opposite, which have been there the whole time. But you focus on one thing, and it's amazing what you can do if you just sort of stop and look around. And then on another occasion, I was there, and it rained, and for the first time, those reflections leapt out at me, and so it's one of those places I will periodically go back to, just sort of if I feel a bit blocked up and lacking in inspiration, I find that this is one place that sort of helps to sort of bring me sort of get the juices flowing again. And this my favorite shot that I've ever taken, and it grew out of a sort of fairly simple architectural study. And for those of you that know this building at 101 Collins and know it well, you'll know that the concierge's desk is not in that position. Right. And when I was playing around, this is a redo of the original version of the shot, because I was sort of, it's probably the only time I've ever gone back and redone a shot where the redo has actually worked better than the first one. And I think it's because I had a very, very clear picture of what I needed to get this shot to work. First one was sort of was an older camera, it was low resolution, there was a little bit of motion blur, it didn't quite work. And so I went back and I redid it, and the sort of the repositioning of the elements is what makes this shot work. I mean, without and even the sort of attitude of the concierge, I gave him a print of this, and he loved it, and this picture has been very good to me as well. So but once again, it's something where I needed to take control of the material that I'd created to get the effect that I wanted. So once again, these sort of images, I will, if I'm putting them in an exhibition or into a competition of some sort, these obviously don't go into the ones that require the street aesthetic of sort of unmanipulated and unmodified. But there's no shortage of other places that I can use them. So it's something that I feel is still very close to the street. It draws its inspiration from the street, but it sort of then goes beyond that, because sometimes I just feel that I have contributed more to this. If I get a great street shot, I mean, that can be through perseverance, it can be through luck, it can be through observation, it can be through any number of causes. But I find that these images are something that I've had a much more direct involvement in, and therefore I sort of feel much closer. I hold these images sort of very close, because I feel that they are something that I have created directly. Now, when Sue first asked me to do this talk, I thought I had something already prepared. I'd been asked to give a talk to one of the camera clubs on street photography, and I said, I can probably do that, but it won't just be street photography. And I was originally going to present that talk tonight, but I thought that there would have been just a little bit too, it was a little bit too instructional for this audience, and so I decided to sort of headed in another direction. And to be honest, I was still trying to figure out exactly what I was going to show and say tonight, this afternoon, and probably even into early this evening. I was still shuffling photos in and out. So I hope it's worked. But I also did at Sue's request, keep in from that talk a section on law and ethics. So I'll start with law. Law in relation to street photography in Australia is fairly straightforward. You, as an individual, right, or there is no concept of privacy or any entitlement to privacy in a public space. in Australia. So you are free to take pictures of anyone in a public space. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you should always do it, but in terms of the law, in a public space, you are free to take pictures. Now, there will be some exceptions to that. You may well be challenged if you are taking pictures in a lame way outside the Supreme Court. Now, that's still a public space, but you know there are certain sensitivities there. But other than that, you are free to take pictures as long as you are in a public space. Now, mirrorless cameras these days have made it a lot easier with their sort of, you know, flip out screens and fantastic live view and you know, sort of perfect autofocus in those circumstances to sort of really be quite it's made it a lot easier to be surreptitious when you're taking photos. So you still need to be sort of sensitive about the sort of pictures you're taking, and sometimes, I mean, even I, you know, sort of, you know, feel like I'm sort of getting a bit close to the line when I'm sort of, you know, pretending to do something else while I'm snapping pictures of, you know, people 2 or 3, you know, or a meter or 2 away. But sometimes the light is so compelling that you just go for it. We all know that feeling. Another one common misconception, right, is that it is illegal to take photos of other people's children. Now, that is absolutely not the case. Now, that's not to say that you should hang around schoolyards and playgrounds snapping pictures of the children, because you will get into trouble one way or another. But children in particular, it's something where you really need to be sort of sensitive about the way you approach it, especially in the current climate of protectiveness and all the rest. And look, people are naturally protective of their children. Now, if you've got the parents' permission, obviously, as in, you know, as I had here, no issue at all, right? Other cases, you know, use your common sense. Now, all of us have got some variation of this picture. Now, is it a problem? There is a child in it. Is it a problem? Well, clearly not. As I say, we've all taken this picture, but you still need to be sort of sensitive in the way you approach taking pictures of children. Similar sort of thing here. I think that if you approach it sensibly, you make sure that nothing that you're doing is exploitative or in any way offensive or potentially offensive, then you won't get into any trouble necessarily. However, if someone challenges you as to why you're taking pictures of their children, you can have that discussion and then you can offer to delete the pictures or whatever, but be a little bit careful about how you approach the whole concept of taking pictures of the children. We've seen this one before, similar sort of thing. You know, if you're at a distance, I mean, the picture's not exploitative in any way. I don't think I don't have a problem, but I'm still sort of, you know, cautious in the way I approach it. As I said, that there is no problem you under the law in taking pictures in a public space. The moment you move onto private property, the rules change completely. Anyone can ask you, can prevent you, or you can, basically anyone can stop you taking pictures on their property. Now, there are some buildings around the city where they don't have any problem as long as you don't set up tripods or sort of start tripping people up. You know, 333 Collins Street, beautiful building, no problems at all, snapping pictures in there. 101 Collins Street, same deal. You can go in there as long as you're not standing around for too long. They don't mind if you take some pictures there. Other buildings, right? 720 Burke Street in Docklands. You can take pictures, but if they, yeah, they will challenge you if they realise you're taking pictures in there. They will come up and challenge you. They're not particularly attentive, and they're not particularly aggressive about it, but they will come up and tell you to stop taking pictures, right? So how you deal with that is up to you. So you will put your camera away. You can't say, yes, I'm going to take pictures, because they are entirely within their rights to tell you to stop, right? Whether or not they can tell you to take the card out and delete the pictures or whatever, I won't buy into that. I'm not a legal expert, right? But they are entirely within their rights to tell you to stop taking those pictures. This was an interesting one, because I was taking pictures outside this building on Collins Street, the one in the foreground, and I was on the footpath, so in a public space, taking pictures that are visible from a public space, and the concierge comes out and tells me to stop. I was a little amused. I told him that he couldn't ask me to do that, and we had a little bit of a discussion. It didn't get heated or violent or anything like that, but we had a little bit of a discussion about it. I showed him what the pictures I was taking. He didn't seem to have too much of a problem with that, but he was not within his rights to come out and tell me to stop taking pictures of his building. Right. I couldn't then commercialize these pictures. Right. I can sell them as artwork, but I couldn't put them into advertising or whatever without a building release. And similarly with any pictures that you take of people on the street, if you try and sell those as artwork, no problem at all. The moment you try and sell those as a commercial prospect, so you try and put those pictures into an advertising campaign or similar, you need to have a model release from the people in the picture. And it's interesting that a lot of contests, for example, the National Photographic Portrait Prize, requires you to affirm that you do have the permission of the people in your pictures to be depicted. So if you try and put a street portrait into the National Photographic Portrait Prize, you might have some trouble perhaps tracking down that person to ask them their permission. So something to be aware of. Just be sort of careful if you're then using your pictures beyond social media or perhaps beyond selling at prints or similar. An interesting case in point is railway stations. Technically, railway stations, even though they are publicly owned, are not public property. And you do need permission to photograph there. Now, who hasn't taken pictures at a railway station, Southern Cross, Flinders Street, wherever, without permission? I think all of us have, but technically you do need permission from someone. Now, it's quite different. If you look at Melbourne's two main stations, the situation between Flinders Street and Southern Cross are completely different. Flinders Street is still operated by Public Transport Victoria, and in that case, you need to go to the station master. If you want to just take a snap here and there, I mean, just take the snap. And if someone tells you to stop, then you say, "Oh, I didn't know," because honestly, what harm are you doing? Right? If you're but technically, last time I actually went through this, you can go up to the station master's office and they will give you a 60-day permit. Now that may have changed because that was a while ago. They will give you a 60-day permit, and all you have to do if you want to go in there and take pictures for a few hours, if you want to, is go up and get a visitor's pass within that 60-day period. At Southern Cross, the situation is completely different.
Can I just add into the train station one?
Yeah.
You can actually go on to the PTV Victoria, and you can apply online for a permit, which is instantly given to you to shoot in any train station in Melbourne outside the city loop.
Okay, and does that include Spencer Street, Southern Cross?
It doesn't include any, so it doesn't include Flinders, Southern Cross, or the loop stations, but any of the suburban stations, North Melbourne, any of them, you can apply for it instantly online through PTV. It's valid for 60 days, and then you just apply for it again. It literally takes 5 minutes to do.
Okay, thank you, Adrian.
Yeah.
So that covers the suburban lines. The city is as I said, different. Southern Cross is privately operated, and so the deal at Southern Cross is that you need to go up to the security office, explain yourself, tell them what, why, how, where, and when. They will probably begrudgingly give you a 2-hour permit. If you want to set up a tripod, you've got to have a spotter there to make sure no one trips over it. But as usual, the standard, you know, there's people snapping with their phones left, right, and centre. No one is ever challenged for snapping with their phone. The moment you take out a serious camera, it becomes a problem. Who knows why? But take a picture. If someone challenges you, say, I didn't know, whatever, no one's ever going to, I don't think, make you delete the pictures. But if you want to sit there, if you want to sort of go in there and do a proper study for a while, perhaps you want to do some architectural studies or something, go through the process and get the permit. I have even, this is another one where I was actually, and it wasn't when taking this picture, but these are the steps leading up from Burke Street, from the end of Burke Street. Yeah, I mean, you know, are you allowed to take pictures of the station from the footpath? I don't know, maybe the footpath extends, you know, maybe the station extends, I don't know. I have been challenged. Another time when I sort of stood my ground, I was on outside the station, so I don't think that there was any issue. But look, just treat it. That happened once. I have taken any number of pictures outside stations, only ever been challenged once. So it's an unlikely occurrence, but it's something to sort of bear in mind. The galleries are an interesting one because there doesn't seem to be any problem at all with taking pictures in either of the main galleries or any of the private galleries either. So feel free. I mean, you know, don't sort of, you know, I suppose overdo it, get in people's way. Don't set up your tripod. But I've never had any problems taking pictures in either the National Gallery or the Potter Centre, or even some of the small galleries, smaller private galleries around town. The other thing, obviously, is, and I wanted to sort of try and sort of touch on it, but I think Adrian touched on it a few weeks back, is people in vulnerable positions. Right now, people in vulnerable positions can make really interesting photos, but it is also, to some extent, it is exploiting their vulnerability, and if you're working with people in that position, then and you are trying to tell their story and improve their situation, that's a valid thing to do. You know, work with them and sort of, you know, get involved, get to know them, sort of, you know, try and publish a documentary series on those pictures, of their story with those pictures. But to sort of just take a single picture, to me, it feels very much like you're using someone in a vulnerable position as a prop. Now, you could say that about anyone that we take pictures of on the street, but I feel that there just needs to be some sensitivity to people in vulnerable positions. Anyone, you know, you should never take or publish pictures that put people in you know, vulnerable people or anyone in a compromising position. I think that, you know, you should certainly never get into a fight over taking a picture. You should no picture is worth is worth getting belted for. So just be a little bit sensitive. You know, if someone challenges you, if they don't want their picture taken, offer to delete it. Perhaps show them what you're doing. You know, if they challenge you as to what you're doing and why, you can explain yourself. You're a documentary photographer, you're an artist, you're trying to make some art. So don't be aggressive. No picture is worth getting belted for. Yeah. And I think that's it for me. How do we go for time? Ooh.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks so much, Mario. Very insightful and informative presentation. So greatly appreciated. Wonderful mix of monochrome and color imagery. We've got a few questions that have come through. So, and some lovely positive feedback for you as well. So we've got a question from Jason Boys, and he asks, what focal length are you using for your wide angle shots, Mario? And I guess I'll add on to that. Do you have a preferred focal length when you're shooting street?
I am not, I'm a zoom shooter, so I will zoom to, I shoot micro 4/3, right? So, and I shoot with the good lenses, right? But I tend to be a zoom shooter. I have sort of played around with primes and sort of found myself feeling a little constrained. So I will either shoot very much at the wide end, which is 24mm. I have one lens that I use primarily, which is a 24-80 equivalent. I will tend to shoot mostly either at the 24 end or at the 80 end. But I have picked up during the lockdown a 35mm equivalent, a 17mm 1.2, which I am looking forward to playing around with. I don't tend to use anything longer than the 80mm equivalent. I have another older lens, which I really like, which sort of is a 24-120 equivalent. I really should shoot with it more because it just gives a really different rendering to the images. But typically I will shoot between that. So 24 is the wide end. I will occasionally shoot some of the pictures I showed tonight. I've got an ultra wide zoom, which is a 14-28 equivalent. And I will typically tend to shoot towards the 14 end. So I tend to shoot with zooms at the extremes, right, of the range. But I will generally just I don't so much think about. I just sort of frame the shot that I'm after, and I don't worry too much about the focal length. But with the zoom, I do tend to find myself shooting either at the wide end or at the long end.
Yeah, sure. Mario, you've got such strong storytelling and ideas and concepts coming through your imagery. We have a question here from Jim Love, and he asks, do you think of the aphorism before pressing the shutter or during the curation?
Oh, if you're thinking about the little quotes I tend to put on a lot of my Instagram posts, I very much afterwards, right? And I will sit there and think, oh, I'm going to put this picture up, and I will sit there and I will think and I will think and I will think, and I can't think of anything to say about it, so I think I'll go and put another picture up. So I have been running out of things to say of late, and because I haven't been shooting much on the street, I have been tending to just recycle some older stuff until I get some newer material. But I've still got a bunch of stuff there that I haven't put up, that I just haven't been able to think of an appropriate saying for. So maybe that's what I need to spend a bit more time working on.
Yeah. Mario, we've got another question here from Brent, and he says, Mario, fantastic presentation, very insightful and great images. Do you get any release forms signed regardless of the rules and laws?
No, because I normally don't engage with people, and look, I'm not exploiting these images commercially. So in terms of release forms, that's where you tend to need a release form, although I have heard recently suggestions to the contrary, although I'm still reluctant to accept that is necessarily the case. Most of the time I'm trying to shoot as inconspicuously as possible. I used to tell people, as I said, we run an introductory course at my club, and I would, anytime I saw anyone who was sort of holding their camera out like this to focus, right, or to frame the shot with the screen on the back, I'd say, the camera's got a viewfinder, use it. But since I switched to mirrorless, I now find myself shooting at eye level probably 25% of the time, because now I can shoot up here, or I can shoot down here, or I can shoot way over wherever, and the camera will still focus properly. You know, okay, it's not as stable a position, but the image stabilization in these cameras is now ridiculous. You know, I struggle if I can't hold a steady shot at a 60th of a second anymore, without image stabilization. But image stabilization is just, you know, I mean, look, we are so blessed. The equipment we have access to these days is it's just ridiculous. And people say, you know, what camera should I buy? And I say, go and, you know, sort of, you know, I tell them half a dozen, you know, go and get them in your hand, see which one feels best to you, right? Because really, there are no bad cameras anymore. There are good cameras and better cameras. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. If only we could all afford a Leica, right?
Oh God, I had the Australian Photographic Society must have been having some storage problems or something last year. And an email came around, and they had a bunch of stuff for sale, and amongst it was an M3 with the 50mm lens, right? And I thought, because I've been sort of tempted to play around with film, and then I think, why? And then I think that'd be nice, and then I think, why? But anyway, and I finally just sort of thought, no, bugger it, because it'd be fantastic to have a Leica like this. And I said, you know, how much would it? And it was gone. And someone paid $1,200 for this absolutely pristine M3 with a 50mm lens. And you know, you think, what would I have done with it though? Someone was giving away their old, it was a Canon AE2, I think. And I had a roll of film, found a roll of film lying around, and I put it through it. And it had light leaks, but you know, when I got the film developed, there was 2 or 3 frames which was still usable, and I scanned them, and I had a look at them, and I thought, nah. I just thought, nah. I've become, yeah, you become spoiled. I mean, you really do. I think, like I said, digital equipment these days is so good. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely. Mario, you had a wonderful mix of monochrome and colour imagery. I'm just wondering, do you see in colour or black and white when you're out shooting on the street?
Oh, I see in colour, I think. Look, I find some images when I put them up, and I think, no, that needs to be monochrome, and it's generally the sort of, you know, heavy light and shadow. But some images, I've got versions both ways, and both of them sort of work equally well. But if you're putting them into a monochrome competition or something, then, you know, you do the conversion and you flip it over to monochrome, or you know, you put it in as a color. But I definitely see in color, definitely, and I think that most images that I work on do tend to start out in color, and sort of, if I think it will work better as a monochrome, and that could be for any number of reasons, from, you know, just not being able to get the light to work properly, to it being that sort of, you know, sort of strong contrasty black and white type of thing. But I'm you know, I used to do a lot more black and white, I think, than I do now. I tend to sort of work, yeah, primarily in color now.
Yeah. It's amazing how much colour you see in the urban landscape these days, I think, especially in Melbourne. Mario, you also spoke of building a body of work. Where do you draw inspiration from?
Look, like many people, I sort of flick through Instagram each day, and I sort of look at any number of people that are doing just absolutely amazing work. Some of our members and people from all over the world. But while I will occasionally sort of look at a scene and think, yeah, I've got to go and get a shot there. If it's somewhere in Melbourne, right, and I know it or something, I think, yeah, I've got to get my version of that sort of shot. Then I'll go and do that. But I still feel a little bit like I'm stealing someone else's idea there. I like it best when I can find something of my own. And like I said, I've got books from all the masters, but I tend to really try and find something that is ideally uniquely mine, and they're the shots that really give me the most pleasure. That I am, and I think that if I find a spot that I haven't seen before, the reality is that someone has probably already photographed there, but I sort of, it always gives me a bit of a buzz to find somewhere that's new, that I haven't played with before. So in terms of inspiration, I think we subliminally take in, those of us that sort of scan through Instagram or whatever on a daily basis will subliminally take in a lot of other people's work and a lot of other ideas. But as I said earlier, that everything has been photographed.
Mm-hmm.
Except that, go out and do it better. So that's always the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Get to a scene and see how you can put your stamp on it, I think. Yeah. I certainly hope you get back to Venice and Italy sometime soon.
I hope so too.
One last question. Where to from here, Mario?
Look, to be honest, in the last 6 months before the lockdown started, I was really struggling. So that sort of came about to some extent because most of the time I tend to do most of my shooting in around the work area and at the work time, so lunchtime, before and after work, and that sort of tends to limit how far you can get. So I think I need to really sort of break to some extent the link, and I think it's going to happen because I can't see myself going back to the office 5 days a week, possibly ever. All right. So the next thing is to sort of try and go beyond that central city and sort of see what other areas have got, so sort of the further city bounds and just other suburbs. I feel constrained in my own suburb, but maybe I need to sort of really start exploring that a little bit more. But yes, just sort of try and break the shackles of that Hoddle grid and sort of explore other areas, I think.
Yeah. It's such a draw. I feel it myself, just wanting to go into CBD. Like there's color, there's shape, there's people.
Yeah, but like I said, when you work in there 5 days a week, though, it's, look, I clearly haven't seen everything, right? Yeah. You look at our own members' work, and there is something new every day that you haven't seen, and places you haven't been. But sort of being in there 5 days a week, you tend to sort of almost get into a rut where I mean, you've got Centre Place and De Grave Street, you've got Flinders Lane, you've got sort of top end of Collins Street, you've got the stations and whatever, and you just sort of tend to get into a bit of a rut. Now, not having been there now, pretty much not at all for 8 months, best part of 8 months. When I finally get back there on a more regular basis, maybe everything will have changed. I'm sure that the outlook will have changed, as Adrian was saying earlier, that things are less crowded. There's fewer people. It's the vibe is different, and maybe that will be good.
Yeah.
It'll sort of be a different a different Melbourne. Still Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm sure it will look different once we all get back into Melbourne. So Adrian says, come over to Footscray.
Told you I got rid of the western suburbs. I will come over to Footscray because there's clearly some good stuff over there. Not least of all Adrian.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Mario. Really
Pleasure.
Your support and wonderful presentation. So it's back
Thank
to you,
you very
Russell.
much, Susan. Well, you know, I'm going to have to correct you here, Susan. I think the pronunciation of Footscray is Footscray, not Footscray. So there you go. And well, thanks very much for Mario for the wonderful presentation and brilliant images and great advice regarding stuff on the street. All I'm going to have to say is, after our conversation before, you had to include Catman, didn't you?
Apparently they hate him down there. He's a real pain in the ass.
He's a great photographic subject, but we'll move on from that.
Yeah, the only reason I put that in there was because as a street photography project, something that has over 300 portraits in one is,
No, fair dues to you, but it's cricket season, so we'll move on.
I think so.
Observation of the car park and the stair photo, like this is the thing I've always thought about street in Melbourne and anywhere in the world. Is like, you just got to take the photo because it's there one day and it's gone the next. You just don't know. Like I love that shot. It was an absolutely fantastic shot. And guess what? You can't take it anymore.
No, that's right. And look, in some respects, there's some of the shots I really like, that I've got something, right? And you go to that spot now and it's just gone. It's been demolished. It's been covered up by a building site. It's, like those two arrows on the ground, right outside my office are now sort of, that shot can't be got anymore. Now that, it pleases me that I got the shot. It sort of depresses me to some extent that I can never use that material again. But it's things change, so you've got to accept that.
Absolutely, fair dues to you, and I think that's the whole thing about street photography. It's a dynamic situation. You go out and you shoot it, and you get the shot, and next time it's not there. So congrats on the shot. I think it's great, and everyone should be going out there and taking stuff. And that's the whole COVID thing. It's like, this may never happen again. So get out on the street, take some shots, and you get some bizarre shots. You get some weird shots, but guess what? That's what we're doing now. And hey, it may never ever happen again. Go out and create some art. Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah. One thing on your suburb, do you happen to live in Carnegie by any chance, or
Bentley?
Oh, okay, Bentley. It's next door, but I understand what you're talking about. It's the suburbs have been taken over by high rises and multi whatever. It is quite weird, and that's the other thing. Is like, get out in your suburbs and take the photos of these things, because everything's changing so much, and it just gets back to my point before. You're documenting history and you're taking street. Fantastic.
I think so. And look, the historical societies are always after people to come out and help them document things, sort of old houses that are being demolished or before they get demolished, and sort of try and create that permanent record.
Absolutely. There's heaps in the Victorian Archives and Museum of Victoria and all that. They have all of these photos of, like, it could be a gasometer or it could be a Bravo crossing and all that. It doesn't exist anymore. Get out there and shoot it. Shoot it in a way that you should be looking at your street, like maybe include people to get some scale or whatever and all that. But guess what? It's going to go. So get out there and do it. And hey, your photo might end up in an archive that survives forever. In regards to the legal issues, thanks very much for your advice. AASPI has a page on our website that may direct you to some documentation that's helpful. So check that out. There is a tab there. I can't remember the tab is. It might be legal issues, I think it's actually called, and it'll give you some links to documentation from arts legal advice from all over Australia. So that is actually fantastic. So yeah, I've been going out on the street for a couple of days now, and I'm shooting film. So when people turn around and go, "Can you delete that frame?" That might be a little bit interesting. But
hang on, you pull it all out and snip.
Yeah,
put it back in.
So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. But if anyone can provide any information that might direct us to any better information you can supply, that's fantastic. Let us know at AASPI.com.au. So, Mario, on behalf of AASPI or the AASPI members, I'd like to thank you for your time, and your presentation tonight was absolutely fantastic. And if you'd like to view more of Mario's work, you should check out his Insta feed at mario.mirabile, where you'd find links to his website and his alternative Insta feed. So that's all the stuff that is non-street. And you can also find his work in the member galleries of the AASPI website. So log on to aaspi.com.au. Anyway, that just about wraps it up for the series, the speaker series for 2020. And if you'd like to revisit any of these sessions or this session or any other sessions, you can find them in our YouTube channel. And if you don't know where to get there, we've made it easy for you with links on our website, aaspi.com.au. You can follow links there, and you can go to our YouTube channel. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if you're not already, so you will not miss out on any future content, and you will push our channel up in search engines, etc. So thank you for that. Also check out our Insta feed for members, content, news, and monthly challenges. That's always a good one too, to keep involved with our community. So check out our Insta feed. This series will continue next year, so keep your eye on our socials for more info on that. So the speaker series has been great to get everyone thinking about stuff, but next year we're going to crank it up a bit more, and we'll get out on the street. So keep your eye on that. And we hope you've enjoyed the series, and I hope it serves some inspiration to get you back out on the streets with your camera. SITHOM is going to be, it's going ahead in 2021, mid-year 2021, and we'd love to see your work hanging on the walls of the Victorian Artist Gallery Society. So get out there, get creative, and make some pictures and exhibit next year. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a 10th year. So the other thing I'd like to do is like give you a heads up on all the members, for all our members, that there will be a photo walk organised for early next year. We're penciled in for January. We don't actually know the date now, so look out on our social feeds for that. So if you'd like to put a face to a name or pick some brains or do whatever, just come walk the streets with us. It's going to happen. It's going to happen very early next year. Last year was a success. We're going to do it better this year, and we'll have some fun. So that's it for all of that. On behalf of the AASPI community, I'd like to say thank you for joining us and being a part of this series, and a big thank you for everyone that has contributed through all of the sessions on this series. It's been absolutely fantastic. So I really just want to end the night saying stay safe, good night, and come back next year. So it's good night from us, and have fun.
Good night. Thanks again.
See you guys.
Oh.